Hello 8th graders. In this video we'll be taking a look at assignment N.1 on the coordinate plane cluster. It's called Coordinate Plane Review. That's what we'll click into right now. As this problem's loading, you're going to see some notes come up onto the screen right now. And this whole assignment is about identifying the location of a point on a graph. They call it Coordinate Plane Review, and the coordinates on a graph, x and y, help us identify where a point is located. So our first job here, we see they're asking us what are the coordinates for point K, and I'll put a green box around that question. We see here point K, we'll draw a small little arrow to it. There's point K right here, right near the question, and they say what are the coordinates for that point. So our job is to first identify the x coordinate and then the y coordinate. Always start with x first, then y. Here it says x-axis measures how far left or right we are. And for this one, for point K, if I go ahead and change color to red, we can see that it lines up on the x-axis with -4. And it lines up on the y-axis with +4. So when I identify the coordinates here, I'm going to put a -4 in the first box for x, and a +4 in the second box for y. That tells me 4 units to the left on the x, and the 4 for the y tells me 4 units above the origin. That's how I identify point K's location. We'll go ahead and submit that, test that answer, and we'll try one more kind of on this straightforward, easier end. Give me 1 second, clean up my screen. Okay, the next question says, and we'll put a new box around it this time in blue, it says what are the coordinates of point G? And here we first need to identify point G. This is a little trickier. It's sitting right on the y-axis. I'll go ahead and draw a little arrow to this point G right here on the y-axis. So the first thing we measure is the x value, how far left or right we are from the origin. And here we didn't go left or right at all. It's directly in the middle of the graph as far as left or right is concerned. So any point that sits on the y-axis, this up and down axis, is going to have an x value of 0. And in this case, the y value is going to be +5, sitting right on the 5. We're going to skip forward here, if you give me 1 second, to kind of look at a couple more tougher problems. And here we go. Here's our first question. We're going to leave that blue box there and reread the question. It says, which point has coordinates -3 and then -1.5? So first off, the -3 is the x. I'm going to go 3 left. And the only point at all at the -3 mark for x is G right here. We'll go ahead and draw an arrow from -3. It's backwards. This point G is the only one that's 3 units to the left. And now it's a little trickier because it says -1.5, but I notice G, if we draw a little arrow there, is right in the middle of -1 and -2. And that's why G has a y value of -1.5. So we'd be picking point G here. And now again, we'll show one more example. Let's get the fractions. This time they say which point has the coordinates 3 for the x value and 4.5 for the y value. So I would go look on this graph, count 3 units to the right. Here's the 3 on the x-axis, and I see that this one, we'll go ahead and point an arrow to it. Point C is the only point with an x value of 3. We'll double check and make sure the y value is 4.5. We see that right here. Go ahead and switch colors to red. C lines up right in the middle of 4 and 5 on the y-axis, and that's going to give us exactly 4.5 units up on the y-axis. So that's how I know point C is the x value of 3, the y value of 4.5. And then if you're still with us watching the video, we'll go ahead, we'll skip ahead and look at a couple of the more difficult questions that are towards the end. At some point here, give me a second to clean the screen again. Alright. At some point, they'll ask you to start plotting your own points. Here they say graph the point 5 and 5 on the coordinate plane. So just understand, as always, that anytime they give us this, x is the first point, and then y is the second point. So I'm going to go ahead and find 5 to the right and 5 units up, and I'll go ahead and click right here. Go ahead and hit submit. And then we'll look at one more kind of in the challenge zone, the 90 plus point ones, and see how they made that difficult. So it looks like when we get to the 90-point level, they make it difficult by making you plot multiple points and also potentially having you have to plot some decimals. So we'll look, the first point, we'll go ahead and put a red box around it. It says -2 and 2. That's not a red box. There we go. So we're going to have to graph -2 for x, +2 for y. That means -2 for x, I go 2 units left. +2 for y, I go 2 units up. So right here, where you see me kind of putting a red dot, is where -2 and 2 would go. The other one is 2 and 4.5. We'll go ahead and change our color over to blue there. So we're going to try to graph 2 for x and -4.5 for y. So go 2 units right. And then the -4.5 says go down by 4.5 units. Here's -4, here's -5, right in the middle of those two. Switch to the brush. This blue dot right here, that's in the middle of -4 and -5 on the y-axis, and it lines up with 2 on the x-axis. So those places are where I need to put our 2 points. It looks pretty similar for the rest of the way in the 90s. They make you plot some decimal points. They make you plot multiple points. If you still need help on anything in this assignment, you can always feel free to reach out and email me. As always, my email address on the screen right now is ddoherty3@bostonpublicschools.org. I'll make that ddoherty3 a little bit bigger for you at the end of this video. There it is, ddoherty3, and of course at Boston Public Schools. G-chat me, email me anytime you need some help on these assignments if my video didn't help you out.